There was a fear in the community as to who's behind this.
4 murdered Muslim men. The FBI went looking for a killer.
This can be a very powerful tool.
In cell phone data.
I've heard of cases where it was incredibly helpful.
At what cost to personal privacy?
It's damaging society while it's protecting it.
It's a geofence fight.
You know, this is a national concern.
Cell phones are constantly sending and receiving information, and it's common practice for law enforcement to try to get location information from a specific phone, usually belonging to a suspected criminal. But a geofence warrant flips that on its head. Instead of one phone, it's one location. And all of the cell phone data in one spot at a given time could be lumped in to a government search looking for a criminal.
It was a shock.
2 years ago, Muslim men in Albuquerque were targets in ambush shootings.
Some of the younger families just feared for their life.
Abbas Akil, a former president of the Islamic Center of New Mexico, remembers.
And those families that lived, especially south of Central, around the UNM area, I know of students who literally left the city for a few days.
The government, at every level, jumped into action.
Using every piece of technology that we have, and the FBI's technology and expertise has been extremely helpful.
A recently unsealed search warrant reveals the leaps the FBI wanted to make. The agency wanted the names of people at key locations at the times when 4 men were ambushed by a killer. That's not all. As more than 1,000 people gathered to mourn at the Islamic Center, the government asked Google for the location history of every person at a funeral, and they did it in secret.
I mean, this is an egregious example of overreach and our rights to privacy.
In all, Google collected the names connected to 3,100 devices. Akil, who attended the funeral, could have been one of them.
This is really amazing news to me because you brought this to light yesterday, and I'm appalled.
It's easier to understand the scale of the government search from above. You can see behind me is University Stadium and University Field. One football field is pretty big, but the size that the government attempted to search was way bigger, as big as 52 football fields in one circle. The question now is the government violating people's privacy in this instance?
Sure, and it's a good question.
New Mexico's federal prosecutor, Alex Ubaez, would not say his search went too far.
Not that we need everybody at that location's information, but who is the person at every one of these crimes that we think are linked together some way.
Complicating the right to privacy is that you can allow Google to track you or not. It's easy to check. I did, and found I had paused my location history tracking back in 2023.
Of what we are doing, which often is in this case, or actively pursuing someone we believe could be an ongoing threat to others.
Interestingly, Ubaez, a Biden appointee, sees this similarly to...
And I don't think that the federal government is out there surveilling people day to day without a nexus to a crime.
John Anderson, Ubaez's predecessor and Trump appointee.
But I do think, again, there are privacy implications when people are swept up in this kind of an investigation.
So I think your concerns are real. I think your concerns are valid. But I think it's worth taking a close look at the opinions and some of the language within those opinions in the Fifth and Fourth Circuit.
The nation's appeals courts, divided into circuits, cannot agree whether a geofence warrant violate your Fourth Amendment protection from unreasonable searches.
Do you see this going to the Supreme Court?
It has to.
Joshua Kassenberg, UNM constitutional law professor, says the split circuit opinions usually get resolved by the Supreme Court.
Well, I think we should always be concerned about the government's exercise of power. For some people who say, look, I do nothing wrong, I have no worries, my answer to that is don't be too sure that you have no worries. Depending on what you're doing with your cell phone, the government might have found that you were speeding in your car, right? And that may pique their interest.
In the end,
hand behind your back. Behind your back. Stop. Stop. Keep your hands.
The cops got their guy. But they did not identify Mohammed Saeed through cell phone data. Google never turned it over.
We encourage you to call the police.
It was a picture of his car and tips from the community.
I'm not just talking as a minority or as an ethnic community. It applies to everybody.
By the way, Google checked, and of those 3,100 devices,
This is troubling. This is very troubling.
not one belonged to Syed. Ryan Laughlin, 4 Investigates.